Even though the Chief Justice has sought to set the record right regarding the perception the government has about the judiciary, it remains to be seen if it will inspire confidence among politicians and government officers and indeed the public. Shadrach Miti, KTN News.
Well, to put more context into the latest war between the judiciary and the executive, it is Advocate Manuel Zea joining us in studio. Many thanks for joining us on NewsDesk this afternoon. Let's begin with that reaction there. Justice David Maraga finally speaking out. Many have been asking him to stand his ground and answer Fred Matiangi. And he says if the government is dissatisfied, then it should appeal any decision, but in court. Your thoughts on that and the latest standoff we've seen between these two arms of government?
I think, Michelle, thank you so much for having me. First, I would state that the statement by the CS in the parliamentary committee was extremely unfortunate, considering the strides we have taken as a country to develop institutions in this country. We have seen a lot of opposition from the executive arm of government against the judiciary arm of government, which is actually playing its mandate as enshrined under the Constitution. One thing that is important is that members of parliament and actually political players do not understand how the judicial process actually operates in our country. The courts don't just pronounce or give orders. Orders are issued upon invitation by litigants. People approach the institution of the court to seek for certain orders when they feel like certain people in government are not complying with the rule of law. And the court, pursuant to the application of the litigant and based on the evidence that is on record, will proceed and issue orders, either ex parte or inter parte, after both parties have been heard. So the accusation by Matiangi that he has been issued numerous orders which are issued ex parte is very wrong. And to say the least, the judicial process is very clear under the Constitution. If you are aggrieved with an order of a court of law, then you have recourse to appeal the matter to a superior court. And in this case, he had the right to appeal to the Court of Appeal and even to the Supreme Court if he feels that the orders that were issued in the High Court are not right or were issued traversedly. So there is that structure which is being jumped by Matiangi, and I think we did, and it's good that Maraga came up and spoke, because the executive has infringed, or rather has infiltrated Parliament as we speak right now, such that Parliament cannot ask critical questions. The role of oversight of Parliament has been watered down because of the political structure in our country. And if you see what happened to the committee were actually excited how Matiangi was responding to the questions. And we're asking ourselves, are they really exercising the mandate that they were elected by the people to conduct of oversight, questioning certain issues, especially when senior government officials refuse to comply with court orders.
Could that perhaps be the very same concern that Interior CS Fred Matiangi has? Because in his, in his submissions to the National Committee there, he said it's not about the judiciary per se, it's about judicial officers, specific judicial officers who seem to be in cahoots with the opposition and in cahoots with the activist lawyers as well. Could it be that the judiciary as an arm of government has also been watered down?
Well, again, the members of parliament and even Matiangi, it's unfortunate that he doesn't understand the court process. You know, we have divisions of the High Court. We have the Judicial Review Division, where Odunga, the former judge in the Judicial Division, was seated, who has been transferred now to Machakos, was seated. Most of the matters which are against government always and most of the time appeared before him, because he was the head of the Judicial Review Division. We have the Constitutional Division, we have the Commercial Division, we have the Family Division, and so forth. So you can't, a litigant cannot choose which judge to appear before.
Right.
And secondly, it's very unfortunate to implicate personal judges to be in a situation where they want to go against government and issue orders arbitrarily. That is very wrong, because if you look at the structure of judges, the mandate of a judge is to look at both parties and give a declaration. And that is the structure which is under the law.
Right.
So if Matiangi was aggrieved, and if he feels like one of the judges compromised, then we have the Judicial Service Commission, which is mandated to look at complaints that are coming up against judges of the High Court and Superior Courts. So there is that structure under the Constitution where you need to lodge your complaints, and we have seen it work before. We have seen judges being sacked from the Judicial Service Commission by the Judicial Service Commission because of their conduct. So if they feel like some of the judges of the High Courts are not complying with the laws, then there is that structure that needs to be followed. You cannot go to Parliament and try to be a judge of your own case. Apply and go to the Superior Court and actually litigate your case and say this judge was wrong, was influenced by these parties. That way, you're following the procedure. You cannot purport to be complying with the law or appearing before a tribunal, a parliamentary tribunal, at the same time refusing to appear before a superior court that has summoned you to come to court.
All right.
Yes.
So if, the executive seems to be targeting the judiciary, and parliament, according to you, has been watered down because of the infiltration of members of the Jubilee Party, so to speak, what then can the judiciary do, especially with this latest case here, the likes of Fred Matiangi, Joseph Boynet, and Immigration PS Gordon Kihalangwa? They were each found guilty of contempt. They have each been fined 200,000 shillings. And there was a question as to whether that was enough of a punishment, but that is what the Constitution states, either a fine of 200,000 shillings or a jail term of 6 months. But let's relate this to the case we've seen in South Africa. Jacob Zuma is actually being taken accountable for the crimes he committed during his tenure. What more can the judiciary do to ensure that those who feel they are above the law are really taken care of?
First of all, I need to say that we have a progressive constitution. We promulgated a very progressive constitution in 2010, which actually covers every issues that are coming up at the moment. First of all, there is the principle of separation of powers. The three arms of government are supposed to coordinate and work together. At the same time, they act as checks to each other. The executive checks parliament, and parliament checks the executive sometimes, and parliament also checks the judiciary. And we have seen through the appointment of judges how they appear before parliament committee, and they are vetted and all those. That is the process of checks and balances. And sometimes the judiciary has been on the receiving end most of the time, because executive you saw what happened in the last elections, how they were on the receiving end, because they are not political figures. They are in appointive positions, and they cannot comment as to political issues. They can only issue directives as the law requires them to do. So there is that principle that the principle of separation of power has been watered down. As I stated earlier, Parliament is actually a branch of the executive. Orders are coming from State House, and Parliament comply, which is not the task that we are supposed to conduct. If you see what happened in South Africa, they gained their independence much later, in 1994, and they have progressed by strengthening the institutions that they have. The judiciary in South Africa right now, we in Kenya rely much on the judicial process in South Africa. The cases and the precedents, we borrow greatly from the South African jurisdiction. And if you look at their constitution, our constitution was drafted on the basis of the South African constitution. Much of what is contained in our constitution was borrowed from the South African constitution. This is because the South African constitution was autochthonous. It was looking into the situation of Africans as compared to previous constitutions which were adopted from the Western world. But South Africa has, through these constitutional changes, developed their institutions. The prosecutorial process is extremely strengthened. The process of appointing people into office is extremely strengthened. And you've seen the results. Now, Zuma is facing charges against 21 charges, corruption charges against himself while he was president.
Right.
He was enjoying immunity. Now he's not president and he's facing these charges. So we have a lot of jurisprudence to borrow from the South African kind of system and democratic space to our space, because they have been our bigger brother in terms of judicial development. And I believe that we are still taking baby steps. By virtue of the fact that we are having this discussion today, today. It means that we are in the trajectory of improving and strengthening our institutions to the level of South Africa and other jurisdictions in the world.
All right. And even just as we wind up on the same, you bring in the concept of strong institutions, yes. Which is definitely what we need in the country. This, latest war between the judiciary and the executive, for example, began with, or was reignited with the Miguna case coming back into the country. And many have asked a lot of questions, about this case. For the government side, for example, how was this man cleared to vie in a national election? What does that mean about the institutions that we have tasked to carry out integrity checks? Bodies like the IABC, bodies like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. What there needs to be done to strengthen these institutions, considering that the very three arms of government do not seem to be in agreement?
I think the Miguna situation is one of the unfortunate events that took place in our country, and it has actually opened our eyes to the political influence in the rule of law space, right, such that we have the executive making certain arbitrary commands which are against the Constitution. We have seen an individual being deprived of the rights as enshrined under the Constitution. Miguna went to court. You remember when the first time before he was deported, there were court orders which were issued by superior courts to actually produce him in court. There was an application which was filed when his whereabouts were not known, and he was not produced in court. And we saw the process, and we saw the matters go to superior courts in the high courts, and high courts issued several orders asking the government to actually comply and return Miguna back to the Kenyan jurisdiction. That has not happened up to date. And the question we need to ask ourselves, what do we need to do as a country when one arm of government is extremely hell-bent in ensuring that rights of individuals are violated? And then you saw we in 2015 enacted an act called the Contempt of Courts Act, Contempt Act, which has actually small consequences, like what you saw, the fines that the court issued of 200,000, which can obviously Matiangi and any other person can pay and walk out. We need to review that act to ensure that we strengthen it to the extent that a person who has been appointed to a position of leadership like Matiangi should be able to comply with court orders. Now, if you look at the orders that were being issued by the court, it's very important to go back to what informed the court to issue those orders. It's the law that is structured in a way that when litigants approach it and when they see, and it's clear to Kenyans that Miguna's rights were extremely violated. And as we speak at the moment, Miguna's issue is extremely personal, to the legal system, as it is raising questions as to whether we really respect the institution of the court. There ought to be policies and structures and amendments to the law to ensure that people who violate these orders are actually not fit to hold public office. Matiangi, as it stands, is a convict. He's been convicted, and he has not actually complied with that conviction. Now, he doesn't really have the locus as contained under Article 10 of the Constitution, the national values, to really hold public office. So there's that need to review our laws to ensure that we have these people brought into book personally, because right now they are hiding behind the structure of government.
Whose mandate is it to bring these people to book? Is that not the judiciary? And
that mandate is universal. It's for all the systems. You see, the judicial authority derives its powers from the people, as provided under Article 159. The executive also draw their power from the people, same as Parliament. They draw their power from the people. We, the people, have a mandate and a responsibility to actually rise up and question these matters. And I'm sure there will be a suit in court actually asking, claiming that Matiangi is not fit to hold office. Those are the things that need to be done. The civil society, the Law Society of Kenya needs to come out strongly and speak about these ills. That way we can be able to really reform the judicial process and ensure that court orders are being complied with.
All right, yes. Many thanks for putting context into that. That is Advocate Manuel Hosea putting context into the latest row between the judiciary and the executive. Chief Justice Chief Justice David Maraga, I beg your pardon there, having reacted to the remarks by Interior CS Fred Matiangi, alluding to the fact that judicial officers are colluding with the opposition as well as activist lawyers. Let's now take a look at other news now. And the county government of Turkana, together with the UN agencies, visited the new Maraga settlement in Kakuma refugee camp to discuss the new settlement plan that is set to bring development, enhance cultural integration, protection and assistance of refugees. Maraga settlement is shared by refugees and host communities in Kakuma. Our reporter Fatia Mohammed Nur was at the site and filed the following report.
Maraga settlement in Kakuma, Turkana County that hosts over 38,000 refugees. Now, this is a new settlement that was established in 2015 after the UNHCR requested the government to expand the Kakuma camp that had surpassed its capacity.
The new Maraga settlement is located about 40 kilometers northwest of Kakuma. Due to the raging conflict in some countries in the continent, the number of refugees has increased significantly. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and UN Habitat are working together to resettle the growing numbers of refugees in Kakuma.
Now, the concern is the South Sudanese refugees at the most in these camps. They stand at 106,000, followed by Somalis at 34,000 and Ethiopians at 10,000. So these numbers have, of course, caused the influx that has led to these settlements to be established.
The UN agencies have also set up public spaces that are set to provide recreational facilities in the area. It also provides for an urban planning center with a view to promote strong relationships among the host communities and the refugees through games, youth engagement and women empowerment groups. The settlement has new building structures made of stones and bricks to create a more permanent settlement for the refugees. Fatia Mohammed Nur, KTN News.
Right, and let's now take a look at what's happening in Western Africa, where at least 1,200 of the more than 100,000 people displaced by Boko Haram violence in Nigeria's northeastern town of Bama have returned. A major trading hub on the road to Cameroon and home to 270,000 people was captured in September 2014, forcing residents to flee to Maiduguri, the state capital. Borno State Information Commissioner Mohammed Bulama told AFP that the returnees are male residents coming back after the town was partly rebuilt. Each returnee was given a bag of rice, a bag of millet with $27 to begin a new life.
We have returned close to 3,000 IDPs to Bama. Look at the ground now. Each and every household is due to receive a bag of rice, a bag of maize, blanket, a jerrycan of oil, among others, with a view to starting its means of livelihood. I think we must commend the effort of the Minister for this giant strike in ensuring that people are returned.
And further afield, 15 years ago, Abu Ali was thrilled to see American soldiers enter Baghdad. The tyrant is finished, he remembers saying, imagining a bright future for Iraq without Saddam Hussein. But the years that have since followed have brought only misery, looking at photos of 3 of his sons killed in the attacks and ensuing chaos. Let's take a look.
15 years have passed since the US-led coalition overthrew Saddam Hussein's regime, bringing big hopes to many Iraqis, like 61-year-old Abu Ali. But since the 2003 invasion, the country has sunk into violence. Abu Ali lost 3 sons in bombing attacks in 2007 and 2013.
The current situation is not promising. Each side has a different opinion. The security situation is bad and politicians only seek power. They don't think about the Iraqi people.
Iraq's education system was also affected. Many professors left the country after the US-led invasion and the violence that followed. Ali Abbas teaches media at the University of Baghdad, and he paints a bleak picture of the past 15 years.
We got rid of the dictatorship and wars, but we lost security and safety. For us teachers, it got to a point where we only got the job done instead of being creative. We used to aspire to further improve education and all levels of life, but what is happening is preventing us from doing what we want.
This is the square where 15 years ago Saddam's iconic statue was dismantled by American troops. When he saw them coming, Qais closed down his shop just across the street.
Baghdad didn't fall until the statue fell. Saddam was strong and very controlling, and at the time people believed he had chemical weapons and that he would use them. So they were afraid.
After years of violence, Iraq recently won its war against the jihad.